Welcome back to Question Period and more of our top story. Ottawa and Alberta signed a historic energy deal this week. It lays out conditions under which a new major oil pipeline to Canada's west coast could be built. But while groundwork has been laid, there's a lot that has to be done before shovels can actually go in the ground, including overcoming staunch opposition from BC Premier David Eby and coastal First Nations. Here to walk us through the challenges and opportunities ahead is a man who has spearheaded a major pipeline project to BC's coast, Ian Anderson. He previously served as CEO and president of the Trans Mountain Corporation and president of Kinder Morgan Canada. Hi, Mr. Anderson. It's a pleasure to see you. Thank you for making time for our program.
Yes, thanks for having me.
I wanted to start off on what is emerging when it comes to the feasibility of a potential new pipeline out west as a key question. Will a private proponent come forward? And I wondered, based on your expertise in the area, what you think the main things that will inform that decision are.
Yeah, I think there's two fundamental things. I mean, one is going to be obviously satisfaction that the regulatory risks of proceeding with a project of this sort are manageable and predictable. And from what we've heard from the Prime Minister and the Premier, they're going to make every effort for that to be efficient and timely and predictable. So investors are going to look for that regulatory, kind of a certainty. I think the second thing, and maybe the most important thing in the next step of considering the proposal, is commercial support. The upstream has to commit to move the barrels on the pipeline at some predicted toll based upon a cost estimate. So commercial support and that underpinning is fundamental to undertaking a project of this sort. And I think that's probably the next place that any proponent is going to consider where the barrel's coming from, who's producing them, over what time frame, and looking for that commercial commitment.
And what will go into the decision on, you mentioned some of the factors there, but on commercial support, like what sorts of things will determine that for a company?
Well, they're going to have to look at production profiles and where they think their barrel production is going to come from. I think the steps that are being taken to eliminate any emissions cap, to set a firm, carbon price ceiling, to, consider the regulatory efficiencies upstream as well, clarity around methane, clarity around, the delivery of pathways and a CCUS solution, all will go to have upstream investors look at what their production is going to be over the coming decade. I think that we're going to see incremental expansions on both Trans Mountain and Enbridge, provide enough capacity for the near term into the next decade. So it's going to take upstream production commitments in order to line up the commercial commitments they're going to need.
When you referenced off the top there the regulatory environment, I mean, you lived through such a unique thing in Kinder Morgan's decision, right? Because of all of that, to back away from the expansion, you were ultimately the one that pitched then Finance Minister Bill Morneau on the federal government taking it over. Based on, and I understand this is just a first step, but based on the changes that you have seen, do you think it's enough of a change to the regulatory environment to provide a higher level or a necessary level of certainty?
I think there's still work to be done. I mean, what we've heard this week is important. It's maybe historical in what it's accomplished in terms of alignment between the federal government and Alberta, the likes of alignment that we haven't seen in decades. So I think that it is a real solid, great platform. Now the hard work really begins, which is, what does a pipeline route look like? What port destination might we consider? Then who are the impacted communities? So there's lots of groundwork to be done, Vashi, that is the next order of business. Spending some time in British Columbia, as I have over the last 15 years, working on Trans Mountain, local interests matter. So the evolution of the regulatory change, can we possibly get a regulatory decision in 2 years, like the Prime Minister is promising? Mine took, 6 or 7 years. So it will create the necessity for fundamental bureaucratic and regulatory authority shift in order to create the certainty that investors are going to look for. 2 years is very ambitious. The Premier says she's going to file a project plan with the Major Projects Office by July of next year. Well, that can't have done all of the detailed engineering and route assessments and environmental assessments that's going to be ultimately be necessary to prove out a project of this sort. So there's lots of work to be done. I think that the signals are extremely positive. I think that the intentions seem to be very genuine and very thoughtful. As we saw, the Pathways pipeline is a prerequisite to an oil pipeline and vice versa. So each of those will have their own challenges. I think that we haven't yet seen the regulatory risk evaporate, but it's certainly the intentions of the MOU very strongly pointed in the right direction. The other part of that, of course, is that I believe that the industry itself is going to have to get behind this. We can't just look for Ottawa and Alberta to solve this. We're going to have to lean in as an industry, both upstream and midstream, to demonstrate that we're prepared to do the things necessary to satisfy the tight timelines as well, because industry's wired to do their work over years. And if we're going to be able to comply responsibly with legislation, environmental legislation and the like, we're going to have to do a lot of hard work as industry. And we're going to have to lean in on Indigenous engagement in a very meaningful way.
Just one final question for you, Mr. Anderson, because I've heard you talk about the decision or the push that you made ultimately when Kinder Morgan decided to back away to try and sell that pipeline. You had a belief that there was a real, national case to be made for expanding TMX. Do you feel the same? Do you feel that case exists from a security perspective, from a whole bunch of different perspectives? Do you think that there is an imperative nationally to get another one built to the West Coast?
I believe there is. But as I said earlier, it's going to take the upstream support and commitment to underpin it. I didn't hear anything from the Prime Minister suggesting that the federal government was prepared to take any financial risks or provide any financial guarantees. Maybe that will come in due course. In fact, you could create an ownership structure that still had the federal government involved in a new pipeline. You could have the provinces involved, economically, and that aligns interests. But I think that is going to take that commercial commitment for us to be able to see the barrels that are going to fill. I think Alberta's got an opportunity to provide some barrels through the royalty in kind program. So I think there's a start there that Alberta can help with. But I can see the need, as I said before. I think Trans Mountain Enbridge can keep the market balanced for into the next decade. And this pipe is a pipe that we're talking about, in real terms, being required in 5 to 6 years. And I think that's totally achievable. And we're going to have to decide, and the market should decide where that pipeline ends up. Is it Kitimat? Is it Prince Rupert? Is it Vancouver? Do we go back to Vancouver and build another pipe, along the existing Trans Mountain route, which is always an alternative? So I think that the market has got to now respond. The market's got to respond with its dollars, with its commitment, and with its energy to do their own business a different way if we're going to meet these timelines.
I'll leave it on that note. Thank you for your insights today, Mr. Anderson. Really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
When we come back, the 3 things I'm watching for this week. Stay tuned.